Mr Speaker, I stand this afternoon to bring on this matter of public importance about cost of living. There is no doubt that the pressures Tasmanians are facing right across this state, across all sectors, across all families, is the intense pressure of the weight of cost of living burdens for families, also for businesses, and as we know, many businesses in Tasmania are in fact families, single-person businesses supporting a family, families employing other families. So the pressures are being felt by almost everybody in Tasmania. And there is no doubt that the actions of this government are increasing that pressure and that feeling, and this government are not doing the responsible thing to see where they can take action to relieve some of that pressure. We know there are things that this government can directly do to support Tasmanians, Tasmanian families, Tasmanian children, but they refuse to act, and you have to ask why. We know today, just almost 3 hours ago, the regulator brought down his determination around the increase in power prices for this year, 9.51%. On the back of increases last year, the single most direct, immediate thing that this government can do is cap power prices. There are people all across this state that recognise the efforts, the investment, the blood, sweat and tears that went into the building of the hydro, that generations of Tasmanian are proud of and that speak of so often, and they recognise that that effort was done in order that Tasmanians would benefit. The people that did that work did it for future Tasmanians, and now future Tasmanians are being let down by this government because this government allowed Tasmanians to be impacted by the volatility of power prices on the mainland. The one thing this government can do, but ministers, the Premier, collectively the government refuse to do what is right. And the right thing to do would be to cap power prices and to ensure that Tasmanians paid a Tasmanian price for Tasmanian power. Not just Tasmanian families, but Tasmanian businesses. And in fact, although cost of living pressures are being felt by so many, cost of doing business pressures are also being felt not just by small businesses, but medium and large businesses and our Tasmanian industrials that support local communities and support the economy that can actually make things better for local Tasmanian families. There would have been a time, perhaps a couple of years ago, where you might hear a story from a local family and a local parent might share with you in a moment of grief where sometimes they make a choice to go without in order to provide for their children. That sometimes you might sit the family meal down at the table, feed your children and say to them, it's okay, I already ate. While I was putting dinner together, I ate it, but here's dinner for you. Knowing themselves that what they were doing was sharing what they had available from their groceries with their children and choosing not to eat themselves. Yeah. More and more now, more closely, in a timely way, we are hearing stories of individual parents going without food for the majority of the week. I heard just today a story shared with me from a mother of 3 children, and she says that she's lucky to eat a full day's food twice a week in order that she can feed her children. Yeah. The costs of groceries, the costs of fuel, the costs of power are crippling Tasmanians. The increasing costs of rent, the unaffordability of being able to secure home ownership, let alone possession of a home through rental, with so many Tasmanians on the street, living in tents, living in cars, living in places and in circumstances that so many people would not be able to imagine. This government has, well, a normal sentence in a normal place might say that this government has the capacity to make change for Tasmanians. I actually question whether this government has the capacity to make change for Tasmanians, but this government should recognise the impacts that cost of living pressures are having and pull the levers that are available to them. We have heard today, we have heard in recent weeks, in recent months, in almost the entire time that I've been in this parliament, that this government have policies. They have made commitments, not only in this place, but to Tasmanians through elections, that they would cap power prices. And if volatility remained in the national market, they would seek to practically de-link from the national energy market. They haven't acted on that. We hear them say that there are all sorts of things, but what we know is that they are people that break their promises, They are people that block the opportunities of Tasmanians to do well for themselves. And they are people that say one thing and either do something completely different or don't act at all, or don't do anything. They are more content to kicking the can down the road, sweeping matters under the carpet, than actually doing the hard work and acting in Tasmanians' best interests. And by kicking the can down the road, they continue to put the pressure on Tasmanians. Tasmanian families no longer have the opportunity to push out their bills. They no longer have the opportunity to kick their own can down the road. We know there are Tasmanians, significant number of Tasmanians with power price debt. Aurora, Tasmania have reported the significant number of Tasmanians with significant power price debt that they're managing. We also now know that TasWater are managing significant debt of individual Tasmanians. Tasmanians are at the point where day on day, week on week, month on month, the pressures of the bills coming in and their responsibilities weekly to themselves and their families is getting too much. And at a time where cost of living pressures are intense, we know that the support for Tasmanians, not just financial support, but their emotional support, their mental support, is also being taken away by this government. At a time where Tasmanians are struggling the most, we have heard about the closure of St Helens and the closure of mental health supports for Tasmanians. We have heard the impact that that is having on Tasmanians. It is not okay for this government to ignore the reality of the hurts that are happening in Tasmania. The one thing this government can do is cap power prices in Tasmania to ensure that Tasmanians pay a Tasmanian price for Tasmanian power and alleviate the burdens that they are feeling and the pressures that they are feeling for themselves and their families, so they can actually have the clarity of focus of mind to care for and support their children, their families, their parents, without the pressures of knowing that this government are not ever going to act in their best interests.
The Honourable Minister for Energy.
Thanks very much, Mr Speaker. Very